Washington state policies affect your safety, your taxes, and your family, whether you pay attention or not. Here, I'm trying to make sure you do. This is the Evergreen Report, and I'm your host, Jay. And here on the Evergreen Report is where we expose the impact of local government so you can take action. So, as you may have heard, rent control has passed the House, at least for now, and it's in the Senate. And we've had many bills that have died over the last week or so of the current legislative session. So, we're going to jump into all that today and much more here on the Evergreen Report. So, what has happened? Well, a lot's happened in the last week or so since I haven't been with you. House Bill 1217 passed, bringing rent control to Washington, or at least one step closer at least. The bill caps rent increased at 7% per year, limits move-in fees and late fees. But more on that soon. Meanwhile, a list of controversial bills failed, meaning they will not become law this session. And again, very important to note, this session. We're just going to run through this whole big, massive list because it is quite large, and I'm very happy that a lot of these bills have died. So first and foremost, House Bill 1380, which would have protected homeless encampments from being cleared, dead. 1399 allowed the state to remove elected officials from office, dead. 1607 imposed a new tax on bottles, dead. And that one was just insane because it was like 10 cents per bottle. So if you bought like a 6-pack of like little Pepsi Zeros or whatever, it would be 60 extra cents on top of what you're already paying. House Bill 1150 would add new fees on groceries. I believe that one was specifically on like the self-checkout or something, but just making groceries more unaffordable, of course. House Bill 1178 reduced penalties for gang-related felonies, and I believe this was the bill that we covered a couple times here on the Evergreen Report, where it was talking about just if a juvenile commits murder and they, only committed 2 versus 3, they could still petition for early release or have their crimes reduced, kind of thing. It was just ridiculous. House Bill 1189, this one I'm very grateful that is dead, would have allowed convicting criminals to volunteer unsupervised in schools. Whose great idea was that? Did we ever get a name? Let me look up the name. Because I love looking up the name of the senators that supported these bills or sponsored these bills or these representatives that did. And it's always just so disappointing when that happens. We'll get to that in a second, but House Bill 1458, which would have increased construction costs with new carbon mandates. So hooray, that one's dead. Let's build more. More is good. House Bill 1317, which would enable early release for violent offenders. And I don't know if you guys were covering it or not, but the Randy Cruz was covering it, and it was just an interesting story. She was covering on her show where the Timothy Pauly case, where Jay Inslee would have granted him a release, but then Bob Ferguson actually did rescind that and is not letting Timothy Pauly out early. He was the one that attempted to kill 5, ended up killing 3, just in a brutal murder. I'm sure you can look that up and then go find a true crime podcast about that. I'm pretty sure True Crime Garage has covered that one in depth, so very interesting stuff there. Anyways, I digress. I'm a true crime fan. What can I say? Let's see. 1448 would have implemented ranked choice voting. I don't even know what this one means, but implement ranked choice voting. So that one's dead, thank goodness. House Bill 1723, which would have raised school construction costs with labor requirements. So thank goodness that one's dead too. Let's make schools easier to build. We need more schools, more teachers to be able to meet the needs and the demands of, the state as a whole. 1125 gave activist justices a power to reduce criminal sentences. Thank goodness, because now any judge can't just reduce criminal sentences for anyone that they want to, pretty much. 1881 would have given the Attorney General control over hospital mergers threatening rural healthcare. Thank goodness, even people in rural areas do deserve quality healthcare, believe it or not. 1223 would have required minimum wage for prisoners and allowed them to refuse work. Which, whose idea are some of these bills? Seriously, like, they're in prison. They don't get to refuse anything. They don't have their rights. The only rights they have are 3 hops and a cot. Come on now. I know that sounds insensitive, but seriously, they're in prison. They don't deserve the same minimum wage as you and me. And they definitely don't have the right to refuse work. They get told what to do. They're prisoners. They committed crimes. That's not illogical. Anyways, House Bill 1923 would propose redesigning the state flag removing historical elements, aka George Washington. So thank God that one's been dead. And then the tax on cow fart, House Bill 1630 is also dead as well. And then lastly, House Bill 1015, which would have mandated energy labeling on residential real estate. So thank goodness all these bills are dead, and we get to move on with our lives and celebrate. But first, let's jump back into rent control. So I want to talk about this bill at length today because there is so much to dive into with this bill. So why does it matter? Apparently, quote unquote, renters will have more stability, but it will also lead to fewer rental properties. And of course, our dead bills show what almost passed, what didn't pass. Some may celebrate, but these issues could return next session. And of course, finally, in our opening segment today, rent control has a history of reducing housing supply and would go directly against Governor Ferguson's plan to build the most houses ever by a governor in the state. So we'll see what happens next. It stabilizes rents in the short term, but discourages new rental construction. Meanwhile, the dead bills are a warning. Expect them to resurface in the future. Just because they die now does not at all mean that they're dead forever. So now let's jump into the Evergreen Ledger, our legislative roundup. Starting off hot with House Bill 20. And guess what? We're covering all the taxation bills. Lots and lots of bills on taxes. We got about 10 different bills here when it comes to taxes today. So we're going to be diving deep into taxes. So you're going to hear a lot of numbers. I'll be throwing a lot of things at you. Primarily what the local impact is of these bills, the red flags of these bills, my perspective, and well, that's a lot of information about all these bills. So again, pay attention, take note, and let's jump in here. So House Bill 2049, the property tax hike for schools and public safety, which would raise the property tax cap from 1% to 3%, allowing school districts to collect more revenue. Concerns: homeowners will see higher property tax bills. There's no strict oversight, so the district could mismanage the extra funds. So this bill raises the state and local property tax growth cap from 1% to 3%, increasing levy limit for school districts and adjust the school funding formula to provide more financial support for K-12 education and public safety. It aims to address funding shortages caused by inflation and population growth exceeding the previous 1% cap. Local impact here is property taxes will increase faster, generating more revenue for schools and public safety services. School districts receive higher levy authority, providing more funding flexibility for special education, infrastructure, and teacher salary. Statewide levy equalization adjustments aim to ensure rural and low-income school districts receive equal equitable funding. Public safety funding increases, particularly the law enforcement, recruitment, and behavioral health services. Some red flags of this bill, of course, there's always red flags. Higher property taxes for homeowners and businesses is never great, especially in high-cost urban areas. Solution: implement tax relief programs for fixed-income homeowners and low-income residents. Potential for misallocated funds as well. Without strict accountability measures, some school districts or local governments could misuse additional tax revenue. Solution: require transparent spending reports and independent audits for newly generated revenue. Overall, my perspective on all this, take the water first, is that this is a tax increase, plain and simple. Raising the property tax cap burdens homeowners and businesses, especially those already struggling with inflation. Throwing more money at schools doesn't guarantee better results. As we know, the K-12 spending has increased over the years, especially since COVID, gone up like 110%. The outcomes have decreased significantly in that same time frame of 2019. Public safety funding should be prioritized without tax hikes. The state should reallocate existing funds rather than raise taxes to fix funding issues. So if you support this, so this is what you should do. Support this if you believe schools and public safety need additional funding and property tax increases are a fair way to pay for them. Oppose if you believe raising property taxes places an unnecessary burden on homeowners and government to prioritize existing funds instead. Of course, the financial impact is massive. Higher rate, higher value area, no good. Common sense takeaway here, of course, to end us on 2049 here, is stable school funding is important, but tax hikes should be carefully considered. Public safety funding is necessary, but alternative funding sources should be explored first. Tax increases should come with strict oversight and accountability to ensure responsible spending. House Bill 2049, it raises property tax limits to boost school and public safety funding, but at what cost to homeowners? And I want you to be the one to decide. So go ahead and drop that in the comments of this video, wherever you're listening. And as I jump into House Bill 2045 now, as our next bill. So House Bill 2045 is the business and occupation tax increase on large corporations and financial institutions, aka an Amazon tax. This bill increases the business and occupation tax on Washington's highest grossing businesses and financial institutions to generate revenue for education, public safety, healthcare, and social services. The bill imposes a new 1% surcharge on taxable income exceeding $250 million per year for businesses, increase in the B&O tax for financial institutions from 1.2 to 1.9 gross income, exemptions for small businesses, manufacturers, farmers, and eligible businesses. The local impact. Now, let me just ask you this, Washington. Do you like being able to get your Amazon packages in a blink of the eye? How about, you know, that convenient? Isn't that nice? Have all these jobs, these Amazon jobs that, fuel our economy and all these other big businesses as well, banks, things like that. Don't you like that? Isn't that convenient? Well, the state legislature doesn't think so. No, thank you. You think the Mariners, the Seahawks like to operate, their big businesses here for a relatively, decent amount? Do we want to end up like Oakland? I don't think so. I don't want to lose all my sports teams. I like my sports teams. So large corporations and major financial institutions will pay more in taxes, which could lead to higher costs for consumers or reduced business investment. Public services, education, law enforcement, healthcare will receive increased funding, particularly for schools and social programs. Small businesses, farmers, and manufacturers are exempt, meaning the tax burden primarily falls on large corporations and banks. Potential job market effect as corporations adjust to higher tax liabilities, possibly leading to fewer expansions or hiring slowdown. Of course, this is always fun to help schools and public safety and healthcare. That's how it's always fun. You should pick up on that now. There's a common theme in a lot of these facts. Oh, we need it for this. Oh, we need it for this. Oh, we need it on this. We need it to fund education. We need it to fund schools. We need it to fund public safety. But why don't we just use the money we already have? This could drive businesses and investments out of Washington. Higher taxes may deter large corporations from expanding or relocating in Washington. We want to bring businesses in because more business is good. More jobs are good. More money for our state is good. But not like we don't want to drive them out. We want to implement tax incentives for companies that invest in local job creation. We want people to have more jobs, more earning opportunity. We want our economy to be healthier in the state, not less. And this could lead to higher costs for consumers and, of course, employees. Financial institutions may pass increased tax burden to customers through higher fees or loan rates. Large corporations could offset the tax by reducing hiring or increasing product prices. A solution: monitor corporate pricing practices to prevent unfair consumer costs. But again, we don't have to do this. This isn't necessary. We don't have to just tax these large corporations because, it's all about taxing the rich and tax the big corporations all the time. My perspective on this, as I've been sharing, of course, this is a corporate tax hike that could hurt Washington's economy, will hurt our economy. Businesses may relocate to lower tax states, leading to job losses and slowed economic growth. Higher taxes on banks mean higher fees for consumers. The increase from 1.2 to 1.9 financial institutions' gross income could result in higher interest rates and banking fees. Do you know that fee that we always have to pay when we go to withdraw money from a non-bank ATM? Guess what? It's going to be even more. That's where it's going to kick. Or when you have to do any transaction, cashier's check, you got to pay an extra fee for that. You got to pay an extra fee to get checks printed. You have to pay an extra fee for this, that, and the other. All these extra fees, money, fees. They always come. They always keep coming. They don't stop. Government should control more spending instead of raising. We have to control our spending. We don't have a deficit problem. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. That has been highlighted time and time again in all things Washington State does and has done and has tried in these domains. Before forcing businesses to pay more, lawmakers should audit current spending and eliminate inefficiencies. So let's talk about common sense here. So funding schools and public safety is important, but corporate tax hikes can have unintended economic consequences. If businesses leave Washington due to high taxes, the long-term revenue impact could be negative. Before raising taxes, lawmakers should ensure state spending is efficient and necessary. So you should support this if you believe large corporations and banks should contribute more to public services and that small businesses should be protected from tax increases. Oppose if you believe this tax hike will hurt job creation, increase costs for consumers, and drive businesses out of Washington. So as you're doing that, I'm going to move on to House Bill 2046, the state intangible asset tax. Yes, who knows what that is? Who knows what that means? But I'm going to explain it to you right now. So this bill creates a new tax on financial intangible assets valued at $50 million to fund K-12 education, early learning, and higher education programs. Again, it's always fun for one of those things: public safety, education, healthcare, and public services. always fun. It imposes an $8 tax per $1,000 of assets on publicly traded stock, mutual funds, certain financial investments. However, it exempts retirement accounts, pensions, private company stock, and education savings plans. So high net worth individuals, again, the wealthy in Washington who, create the jobs and pay the jobs and bring the business here, uh, with financial assets over 50 million will be taxed on publicly traded stock and similar investment. Revenue generated will be dedicated to education programs, including early learning, K through 12, and college affordability initiatives. Small business owners and middle class residents are not greatly affected by this, as privately held businesses' assets and retirement savings are exempt. Potential legal challenges could arise as previous attempts to tax wealth in Washington have faced constitutional hurdles. So that's again, yes, I understand the rich need to pay their fair share. I 100% understand that. But at what cost does that bring everybody else? And besides, these people that say that all their wealth, they have all this wealth, it's not in Washington directly. It's going to be tied to other places outside of Washington. It's not going to be placed here in the state. It's going to be placed in Arkansas and all these other places. They're smart. They're not leaving their wealth here for it just to be taxed, especially after this. They're not playing that. It could drive wealthy individuals and businesses out of Washington, which again, we don't want that again. High net worth individuals may relocate to avoid the tax, potentially reducing long-term revenue projection. Solutions: study the impact of similar taxes in other states before full implementation. And then, of course, there's going to be legal hurdles, constitutionality. Previous attempts to implement a wealth tax in Washington have faced legal hurdles as the state constitution restricts certain types of income and asset taxation. So structure the tax in a way that aligns with existing constitutional limits and see if that's actually going to work, because I guarantee you it probably won't. So this is a wealth tax disguised as an asset tax. Washington State's Constitution prohibits income taxes, and this bill targets assets that generate income. It could drive investment out of the state. Wealthy individuals may shift assets or relocate, including tax revenue in reducing tax revenue in the long run. Expanding education funding should come from the budget reforms, not new taxes. Again, we don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. We have to reallocate the current funds we have, put them where they actually need to go. Very simple. Before we create a new tax, the state should audit current spending for inefficiencies, and they just don't want to do that. They don't want to audit what we already have. They just want to add $15 billion worth of taxes onto the average person here in the state, which is absolutely ridiculous because nobody wants to pay that. Nobody. So common sense takeaways here. Education funding is important, but Washington must ensure its tax is legally enforceable. Wealth taxes often lead to unintended consequences. Wealthy residents can relocate or shift investment at any time. At the drop of a pin, they'll relocate, shift their investment. Before adding new taxes, lawmakers should ensure state education funds are being used efficiently. So, again, I'll let you decide in the comments. Support this. If you support this, drop it in the comments. If you believe wealthy individuals should contribute more to education funding and that Washington tax system needs reform, oppose it. If you believe this tax could drive away high-income residents, face legal challenges, and fail to generate sustainable revenue. While you do that, we're going to jump into House Bill 5179. Now, I get absolutely fired up about these bills when it comes to school. Of course, these bills that come to tax too, but I get fired up about these bills, especially one that has a new school oversight and complaint process. Allows students, parents, and community members to file state-level complaints against schools. This grants OSFI broad power over local schools and could encourage politically motivated complaints. Shocking, right? No, it's not. This bill creates a state-level complaint process allowing students, parents, and community members to report school districts, superintendents, or school board officials for willful noncompliance with state education law. It grants the OSFI, Chris Rectal's office, power to investigate complaints, enforce compliance plans, and impose penalties, including withholding funding. So they could say to a district like Kennewick, who has been very open and honest when it comes to, saying, no, we're not going to we're going to follow federal law. We're not going to follow this woke BS that's the state law. So shout out to Kennewick and Tumwater and other school districts that are also following it and following the federal law. And this could be very easily be politically motivated to take those school districts down, take those people down, to report them, because we need snitch line and as adults. Because why? We don't want to encourage more Karens. We need less Karens. Let's be real. So this creates a new way for parents and students to report school districts that fail to comply with laws related to civil rights, bullying, discipline, or curriculum requirements. This gives OSFI the authority to investigate and force schools to create compliant action plans, ensuring state laws are enforced at the local level. This allows OSFI to withhold up to 20% of a school district's basic education funding if they are found in willful noncompliance. This adds new legal risk for school board members and superintendents as they could face removal from office or professional misconduct charges for noncompliance. And what is the noncompliance? Can we get a definition on that, please? There's no definition. This grants OSFI way too much power over local schools. It can override local school boards and impose corrective action and redirect funding without voter approval, so which would require independent oversight before OSFI can withhold funding or remove officials. These are people that are elected. So this gives the school board power just to remove elected officials if they don't necessarily like them. And we know Chris Recto's office is woke as a joke. Chris Recto is a joke, but of course, Chris Recto, if you ever hear this, you have a spot on this podcast. I would love to have you on. Message me, hit me up, your people. I would love to have you on. Please tell me your craziness. I would love to talk to you. I'm not blessed with the gift of debate. I believe I am blessed with the gift of common sense. And I believe a lot of things that you do, Chris Recto, do not fall within common sense guidelines. I'm sorry, you just don't. So this could encourage political complaints against schools. It would allow any resident in a school district to file complaints, which could lead to politically motivated complaints and investigation. So this needs to establish clear evidence requirements to prevent frivolous claims. Like I'm saying here, it does not clearly outline what these non-compliant terms and conditions mean. It doesn't clearly state that anywhere. It's not clearly stated at all anywhere. So this bill increases state control over local education. OSFI should not have the power to override school boards and withhold funding based on broad, vague complaints. It destroys the system that can be abused for political purposes. Any resident, not just parents, can file a complaint, allowing activist groups to target school districts. Threatening. So again, anyone that in activist groups that's not a parent, that doesn't have any skin in the game, I guess you could say, it has no bearing to say anything going on with the school whatsoever. If you don't have children in that school district, you essentially are not entitled to an opinion. I'm sorry. You're just not. Like, really, there's nothing that you can say, will say, that will change anyone's mind. Your opinion does not matter. And this is what this sets up for activist groups to lead these charges, these paid groups, these paid actors to lead these charges, which is absolutely ridiculous because they have no skin in the game. They do not matter whatsoever. Anything the school district does, they just want to be, voices of virtue or whatever the hell they think they're doing. They don't have any skin in the game. They should not have an opinion. End of story. And I know that's harsh. So let's see. Threatening funding hurts students, not just administrators. If a school district is found non-compliant, withholding 20% of its education funding could punish students more than district school officials. Again, it's just going to hurt students. It's going to hurt the kids. It's going to hurt the education. It's going to hurt the funding. It's going to hurt the other 99% of teachers, even though there's one bad apple that's getting complained. And it's absolutely ridiculous. The school should be held accountable, but enforcement should be fair and balanced. OSFI should not have this unchecked power to override locally elected school boards. Education funding should not be used as a political weapon. Compliance should focus on fixing issues, not punishing students. And that's exactly what this bill does. Again, go jump in the comments here. If you support this bill, let me know. If you believe schools should be held accountable for following state education laws and families need a stronger way to report non-compliance. Oppose this bill if you are concerned that the bill centralizes too much power to the offices, encourage political weaponization of complaints, and threaten school funding without voter approval. So let me know in the comments. And then we're going to jump into our final bill here on the Evergreen Ledger, Senate Bill 5181. By golly, do I love this bill. Where to start? Senate Bill 5181 removes parental notification requirement from schools for medical services. Delays access to student records from 10 days to 45 days. Eliminates parent ability to sue school for violation. But wait, there's more. Clarifying the law does not create a private right of action, meaning parents cannot sue schools over violation of quote-unquote student rights. This modifies the Parental Rights Law, Initiative 2081, passed in 2024, that they are all about gutting. They want to gut the Parental Bill of Rights, which was worked so hard on to become a thing. But they just want to gut it. They want to build it up, and then they want to gut it. Because no. Government raises kids. In school, teachers, administration, they raise the kids. Not you, parent. Not you. Get the hell out of here. So parents will no longer be automatically notified when their child receives non-emergency medical services at school. That could be transgender care, that could be mental health services, it could be a variation to her services, as long as they're non-emergency medical services. You won't be notified. No notification. Schools must still provide records access, but now have 45 days to respond instead of 10. So 2.5, 3 months, 4 months, depending on how many school days there are in a month. Could take that long. If they want to get up there. That means they have nothing on them, so they don't have to provide it because you can't hold them accountable. This expands rights to file complaints about bullying, discrimination, school policies, but removes the ability to take legal action against non-compliant districts. Districts may have less financial risk from lawsuits, but more administrative responsibilities to handle complaints and maintain compliance. There's no green flags here. The green flags that someone wants to point out could be that it protects students' privacy and safety. I'm sorry. They don't. They're children. If you're under your parent's roof, you don't have the same privacy that an adult does. This ensures that students can access mental health and medical services at school without mandatory parental notification. No, parents are the primary stakeholders in their kids' life, and they absolutely should be notified immediately, not 10 or not even 45 days later, immediately. End of story. It clarifies the standards for rights based on federal law. It aligns parental access records with FERPA, ensuring consistency, prevents schools from being sued for minor administrative failures, reducing legal costs, whatever. Weakens parental rights and oversight. We've already covered this a couple times. Our solution here should be require schools to notify parents of non-emergency care while still protecting at-risk students. It's that simple. You have to notify. It's not an option to not notify me as a parent of what's going on with my kid during school. Especially if you're giving medication, non-psychotics or whatever. Come on now, this can't be kept secret. Not being able to take legal action is ridiculous. We can't hold anyone accountable anymore. This bill reduces parental oversight in public schools, removing notification requirements for medical services, which means parents may be left in the dark about their child's health. Parents should have legal resources when schools violate their rights. This bill removes the ability to sue, making enforcement depend entirely on government agencies. We're not going to do nothing. And we have to wait 45 days to get information about our child's education and what's going on in the school. Absolutely not. No, not okay. Parents' rights should be protected, but student safety and privacy must also be considered. But again, these are students, these are minors that have parents and people who are essentially in charge of their lives. They need to be notified on every single last thing. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Removing legal resources weakens accountability. Schools should face consequences for violating parental rights. And of course, 45 days for records request is too long. Schools should provide key information to parents quickly, immediately, in a week, in a day, 24, 48 hours, 72 hours, however long. So again, jump in the comments here. Support if you believe student privacy should be prioritized, parental rights should be aligned with federal law, and legal protection should be removed to prevent unnecessary lawsuits against schools. If you believe that, I really want to talk to you too, so please drop in the comments. I would love to have a one-on-one conversation with you about why you support this and House Bill 1296, I assume, in the same tune. Oppose if you believe parents should be notified about all medical services at school. Schools should be held accountable through legal action, and access to student records should not be delayed. So again, let me know in the comments. I'd love to talk to you guys. Love to interact with you guys. So we're going to jump into 4 bills next on the tax track. So the first one we're jumping into here is Senate Bill 5796. This is the payroll tax. Let me pull it up. I believe this is the payroll tax. Seattle payroll tax. And again, you'll never guess what it's to fund public services. This bill creates a payroll expense tax on large employers for wages paid above the Social Security wage threshold. The tax is 5% on payroll expenses exceeding the Social Security wage cap, with revenue funding public schools, healthcare, social services, and other state programs. This funds generally will support public schools, behavioral health services, social services, and long-term care for elderly residents. Small businesses and lower margin companies are exempt, meaning the tax is targeted at high-wage employers. Amazon, those big businesses, big businesses that do a lot of money, that contribute a lot to our economy as a whole. Washington State businesses climate could shift as companies adjust to new tax by reallocating, reducing salaries, or limiting hiring. So essentially, a business could still do here, but if they're already at like 6.5 million and they're looking at, oh man, we can't give too many raises. So we give a couple raises here, we get a little bit closer to that threshold, but it stays here, so we stay under that line. But then inflation just keeps going up too, right? but our wages are not increasing the same way that inflation is, and so it's gonna hurt more people if you think of it that way. So yeah, reducing salaries or hiring to offset the tax burden. So this is another tax increase on job creators. Large businesses already pay high tax in Washington, and this new payroll tax discourages investment. Taxing payroll costs can hurt employees, not just businesses. Companies may reduce salaries, cut benefits, and slow hiring to offset new expenses. The state should prioritize existing funds before imposing new taxes. Washington already collects high tax revenue. Lawmakers should audit spending instead of raising taxes again. Do an audit. See where the waste is going. See why we have to implement these taxes in the first place. How about that? Is that simple? Is it not? I'm pretty sure it is. It's a common theme here. Common sense prevails. I'm pretty sure the next one that I'm going to talk about is already dead, but we'll talk about it just very briefly. Public services need funding, but taxation should not discourage business growth. Large corporations can afford to pay more, but higher payroll taxes may impact wages and hiring. A more balanced tax system should include spending audits, not just new revenue sources. Again, we don't have a revenue problem. This is like the fifth time I've said it. Every single one of these bills has the same thing. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. We need to figure out where the spending's going, where it's being spent, why it's being spent there, and if it's not useful, get rid of it and reallocate those funds into something else. So again, jump in the comments. Support if you believe large employers should contribute more to public services, and taxing high-end wages is a fair way to do it. Oppose if you believe this tax will discourage job growth, increase business costs, and ultimately hurt workers. Well, I get a sip of water here. Go to drop in the comments and tell me what you think. Taxing self-storage rentals as retail transactions. The bill reclassifies the rental or lease individual self-storage unit as a retail transaction, making it subject to business and occupational tax and retail sales tax. Currently, storage unit rentals are treated as real estate rentals, which are exempt from these taxes. The new tax revenue will be directed toward affordable housing programs. Again, it's towards some kind of public service, but this one's a little bit of a different tune, specifically going toward public affordable housing program. All self-storage renters in Washington will pay sales tax on their monthly rent, increasing costs for individuals and businesses that use storage units. Self-storage facility owners will pay a higher B&O tax, potentially leading to rent increases for customers. So not only will you pay more as a renter, but you'll also pay more to the facility as well. So you're paying more. Essentially, you could go up half, maybe more. Revenue generated from this tax will fund affordable housing initiatives, specifically for cooperatively owned manufactured home communities. Businesses that rely on storage facilities for inventory, seasonal supplies, or document archiving may see higher operating costs. Again, these aren't good tax. This closes a tax loophole. Other short-term rentals, such as hotels or Airbnbs, already pay sales tax, so self-storage rentals being tax exempt is inconsistent. I don't understand how that's a thing, but I don't think anyone's really living in self-storage unit. Really, I mean, that's kind of hard to live in. Most of them are pretty heavily monitored and they keep people out. A self-storage rent will go up due to a new sales tax charges. Solution: offer a tax exemption for long-term renters. Contract over 6 months. This impacts people in transition and small businesses. Many people use storage units when moving, downsizing, or facing temporary housing issues. This adds financial burden to those already in tough situations. Small businesses that rely on self-storage for inventory or equipment may pass costs onto customers. Solution: exempt business renters or allow deductions for essential storage use. This is a hidden tax increase on working class people. Many self-storage renters are not wealthy, and this tax makes life more expensive for ordinary Washingtonians. Small businesses will take another hit. Adding sales tax to a storage unit increases costs for entrepreneurs and small operations, especially in high-rent urban areas. Affordable housing should be funded through budget priorities, not by taxing people who need storage. The state already collects billions in taxes, and this new tax burden is unnecessary. It's not necessary. We don't need this. Self-storage unit rentals will be subject to Washington's 6.5 state sales tax plus local sales tax rate, which range from 0.5 to 4.1. So it could go up to 10%, 10.6% more. Self-storage facility owners will also pay the B&O tax gross receipt, which may be passed on to customers through rent hikes. Of course, they will be passed. We all know that. No direct tax on homeowners or renters, but higher costs for self-storage users, which is a lot of people. If you've ever tried to get a storage unit, you have to shop around to find different units and different sizes and really find a decent deal. Self-storage is often used by people in transition, taxing it adds to financial strain. affordable housing is important, but should it be funded by tax and storage units? How does those two make sense? This tax will impact small businesses, low-income renters, and those facing housing instability. Again, so support if you believe self-storage rentals should be taxed like other rental transactions, and the revenue should go to affordable housing initiative. Oppose if you believe this tax will burden individuals and small businesses, making storage more expensive while funding priorities that should come from the general budget. So you drop in the comments, you tell me about that, and then we're going to jump into Senate House Bill 2015. So this bill creates a new grant program for local law enforcement agencies, establishes a state criminal justice funding account, and authorizes a 0.1 local sales tax for criminal justice services. It aims to help local government hire, train, and retain police officers while expanding public safety initiatives. Okay, so on the surface, it doesn't sound too bad, right? Right? Well, it's more tax, and there's strings attached. Counties and cities can impose a new 0.1% sales tax to fund law enforcement recruitment, crisis intervention training, and public safety programs. If you listen to the Evergreen Local Tri-Cities edition lately, I did just talk about some public safety things that were going on here locally. Police agencies must comply with specific training and policy standards to qualify for grant. Grant funding can be used for community-based crime reduction efforts, including mental health crisis response and re-entry programs for former offenders. Small towns and rural counties may struggle to meet compliance requirements, limiting their access to funding. So yeah, this is dedicated funding for law enforcement, but it supports and also supports modern policing practice. But this is a new sales tax burden on local residents. Increases the local sales tax by 0.1%, affecting low-income families the most. Solution: consider alternative funding sources, such as state budget reallocation instead of regressive tax increase. Like, why is it always let's get more taxes and more revenue versus let's spend what we already are spending and just reallocate it to this thing that we want to do? That would make so much more sense and be so much easier. Let's just move it line over line. Why not just do a simple audit? Why is that so hard? Why is that so hard? I don't get it. Only agencies that comply with strict state mandates will receive grant funding. This may force small or rural police departments to adopt one-size-fits-all policies that may not work in their community. Solution: allow flexibility in law enforcement policies while maintaining accountability. Again, there's going to be some very strict guidelines for the government to be able to have this, for the local police department to be able to actually do this, for them to be in compliance, to be able to raise this sales tax. Public safety funding is critical, but new taxes should be the last resort. Instead of raising local sales tax, the state should reprioritize existing funds. Tying law enforcement funding to state-mandated policies could limit local control. Communities should have more say in how their police departments operate. This bill expands government spending without addressing existing inefficiencies. Rather than creating new funding streams, lawmakers should audit current spending to ensure taxpayer dollars are used effectively. And of course, common sense would also say the same, but also law enforcement needs funding, but not at the expense of unnecessary tax increases. Tying funding to strict policies could undermine local policing flexibility. A better solution might be reallocating existing state funds rather than increasing taxes. Lo and behold, imagine that. Support if you believe that law enforcement needs more funding for recruitment and training, and a small sales tax increase is a reasonable way to pay for it. Drop that in the comments if you support it. Next, oppose if you are concerned about increased taxes, reduced local control over policing, and state-imposed mandates on law enforcement. So, again, there's more things to think about. There's always lots and lots of things to think about with all these things. So think about that, and then we're going to jump into House Bill 1163, which does affect your Second Amendment right. House Bill 1163, firearm purchases, permits, and training requirements. So what is it? This bill requires a permit to purchase any firearm, mandates firearm safety training for all purposes, expands background check requirements, and establishes new record-keeping and reporting mandates for firearm transfers. It also changes concealed pistol licenses, CPL requirements, requiring proof of recent firearm safety training, which is good. Firearm safety training, good thing, not bad. Gun buyers will need a permit before purchasing a firearm, adding a new step beyond background check, which isn't a bad thing. Firearm safety training, including live firearm exercises, becomes mandatory for both gun purchases and CPL applications. Background checks are expanded to include mental health records with annual reviews to verify ongoing eligibility for permit holders. So this isn't bad so far on the surface, okay? So far, so good. These three things are not bad. Law enforcement must conduct fingerprint-based background checks for all permit applicants, which could slow down the process due to administrative backlog. State agencies must maintain detailed records on all firearm transfers, increasing government oversight on all gun sales. So there are some good things here. I'm getting tired. It's getting late here, guys. It's that time. Almost. I'm starting to run out of gas here a little bit. So this enhances background checks and firearm safety, ensures that gun buyers are properly trained before purchasing a firearm, adds live fire training requirements, mandates annual background check reviews, preventing prohibited individuals from retaining permits, standardizes firearm sales and record keeping. But there are some red flags, of course, some potential terms. So it creates additional barriers to gun ownership. The permit to purchase system adds delays and costs, making it harder for law-abiding citizens to exercise their right. Solutions consider streamlining the permit process and ensuring that permits are processed quickly to avoid unnecessary delays and the increased cost in government oversight. Gun owners must pay for training, permit fees, fingerprinting, which could create a financial barrier for low-income individuals. Government agencies must maintain detailed records on every firearm purchase, raising privacy concerns about data tracking. Solution: ensure permit fees remain affordable and provide clear guidelines on how firearm ownership data is stored and used. So, of course, the perspective on all this is the Second Amendment guarantees a right to bear arms. This still adds unnecessary restrictions. That's the biggest issue there is you have more steps to try to get a gun when you use your Second Amendment right. So requiring a permit before purchasing a gun is a step towards firearm registration, which historically leads to further gun control measures. The government should not track legal firearm purchases. Keeping detailed records on gun owners raises privacy concerns, as history shows these databases can be misused. And then training mandates are costly and burdensome. Live firearm training requirements could price out low-income individuals and create long wait times for classes, which again make guns more inaccessible. And then when they take away your guns, they take away other things too because you don't have anything to defend yourself with. So common sense would say gun safety is important, but laws should not burden law-abiding citizens more than criminals. Background checks should be effective, but not create an unnecessary barrier to legal gun ownership. Firearm tracking raises serious privacy concerns. How will this data be used in the future? If you start a podcast and you have a gun, they could come after your gun saying, "Oh, you're unstable because you said that thing on your podcast," kind of thing, whatever. So support, again, jump in the comments. Support this if you believe enhanced firearm safety training and stronger background checks will help prevent gun violence. Oppose if you believe this bill creates unnecessary government oversight, restricts Second Amendment rights, and imposes financial barriers on legal gun ownership. Which it does. It 100% does. Anyways, we're going to jump into our final segment here, the Woke Wire, where we have one story that I just want to cover very briefly for you guys. This is definitely a nice woke policy that is unneeded, very unneeded. So House Bill 1217 is a bill aimed at improving housing stability by capping rent increases at 7% per year, limiting move-in fees and late fees, and establishing tenant protections against excessive rent hikes. The bill also creates a landlord resource center, which allows tenants to terminate leases if unlawful rent increases occur and gives the Attorney General the power to enforce compliance. So, local impact for renters: more predictable rent, fewer surprise fees, and better legal resources against unreasonable increases. For the landlord, greater restrictions on rent adjustments and fee structures could discourage property investment in Washington. For the housing market, potential decrease in available rental units as investors may move elsewhere, leading to fewer housing options in the long run. So, some pros here. Tenants will have more stable finances, reducing displacement and potential homelessness. Cons: landlords, especially small ones, may struggle to keep up with rising maintenance costs due to restricted rent adjustments. Could lead to fewer rentals of being available as investment in new properties. So there are some pros with this, as with every other bill. Limits excessive rent hikes and fees, gives tenant stability, creates a clear legal process for rent disputes and tenant rights, provides exemptions for new developments under 12 years old to encourage housing growth. Flags: cons: could discourage new rental constructions as investors seek less regulated markets. Caps don't account for inflation, making it harder for landlords to cover increasing costs like property taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Enforcement relies on tenants or the AG filing lawsuits, creating legal backlogs. The kind of view on this one is the bill represents a government overreach into private property rights, potentially leading to unintended consequences like a housing shortage. Rent control has historically backfired, discouraging investment in rental properties, reducing housing availability, and leading to high rents in the long run, and landlords exit the market. So, instead of a strict rent control, a better approach would be increasing housing supply through deregulation, speeding up permitting processes, and incentivizing new construction. Restricting rents does not create more housing; it just creates more problems down the road. Support this. Again, jump in the comments. Let me know if you support this. If you're a rental struggling with unpredictable rent increases, oppose if you believe a free market solution, as this will lead to long-term housing supply issues and higher costs for everyone. So that's kind of the breakdown of 1217. There's a lot to it. There's a lot to know. What is on your mind? That's what I want to know. Do you support rent control, or do you think it will backfire? Send us your thoughts. Drop it in the comments. If you want to take action, call your rep and ask where they stand on House Bill 2049. Of course, you can do that just by simply going on ledge.wa.gov. You can find all your information there for your local representative. Again, know the facts, demand better, take action, and we'll see you next time right here on the Evergreen Report. And remember to follow us on X and Instagram for updates between episodes. If you got a story, send us a message and we might feature it next time.